process to follow, and that's the beginning of the process. Well, the bad news about that is that there's a 2% response rate for online applications. And, I'm not a math guy, but you send 100 online applications out, you're going to get 2 responses. And maybe both those responses are no thank you. That counts. So that to me is just, you may be feeling, as many people in career transition do feel, is that you're doing something wrong. And although I would suggest that maybe that's true, because of that system, it's not your fault. It's you're being led into a system that is broken. And I've said it many times before. I've been helping people in career transition or finding work for 35, 40 years, 35, I guess. And it's always been broken in my estimation. And it doesn't appear like anyone's terribly interested in fixing it. So whatever feeling of shame or guilt, go easy on yourself. It's not your fault, but I do think it does pose the question, well, if the system is broken and I'm feeding into a broken system, what is it that I can do about it? Well, we have to take a different approach. And that's one of the reasons that I wrote How to Get in Front of Decision Makers, because if you're feeding resumes into an online system, those resumes aren't going to the decision makers. They're either going to some sort of automated bot doing a cursory search on search engine optimization and keywords, or they're going to a human resources person or human resources assistant. And with all due respect to them, very few of them are qualified to determine whether you're qualified to do a job that they're not doing. So it's unfair to put HR in that situation. They serve a lot of other really good purposes, protecting organizations from litigation and liability, and making sure people adhere to processes. But again, with due respect to them, if you're getting your resume in front of a human resources person, that's better than a bot, but it's not as good as a hiring authority. So again, all of this has led me to put this presentation together, and this is the culmination of it. Don't claim expertise, demonstrate it. One of the things that the intended purpose of this particular series of videos for me is the other thing that people in career transition are really feeling, particularly in the system I've just described, is a lack of control over their professional future. And I have been in situations in my life, I suppose we all have been, where I felt like I was losing control of a particular situation. And I don't like that feeling at all. And so I was hoping that if I could put some simple content out there and give you some executable things to do, one at a time, that you would begin to get a sense of control back in at least the search. And I find when I coach people that when someone starts to get back a sense of control, what comes right behind that is a sense of confidence. And then you add to that, with some of the answers I can give, a clarity to things that you might not know about right now. What is that? Why is this happening? Why is that happening? Well, if I can give you answers to those things, now we've got control, and we're ratcheting up our confidence. And then when we add clarity to that, that's a pretty powerful engine to take out into the marketplace. And that's hopefully some of what I've given you in all 8 of these episodes. But the reality, another reality of the situation, germane to this particular episode, is no matter what you're doing, no matter where you're looking, almost without exceptions, you're floating in a big pool of talent. And it's very difficult sometimes to distinguish yourself from all the other. And put yourself in the HR people's place or the hiring authorities' place. They don't want to be hiring people. Hiring people is a pain in the ass. Nobody likes looking at resumes. And I've looked at a lot of resumes, thousands of resumes. And if you're looking at 100 resumes, by the time you get to the 40th or 50th resume, they all look the same. It's very difficult to distinguish yourself in this big pool of talent out there. And like I said, when I've gotten in touch with hiring managers and gone around the process before with human resources, and then we appease the HR people, it's really an eye-opening experience. And I'll touch on that here a little bit more deeply in a sec. But I think you have to shift your mindset a little bit and say, you're in a position where you're looking for work, right? And you have a particular mindset when you're looking for work. You have an intellectual curiosity, you have a work ethic about it, you have a routine about it, you have a process behind it. The people on the other end, they don't want any part of it. And I think if you understand that and think about that and kind of go deep on that, what motivates them, and step out of your own shoes and step into their shoes, I think you'll get some insight into other ways that you can work around this broken system. Because I can't say it enough, no one likes the hiring process. Even if we were to fix it, it would still be clunky. It would still be annoying. It would still be necessary evil type stuff. But if you take yourself out of your own shoes and put you in the shoes of the person doing the hiring or in the hiring process, I think you'll find that very helpful. That's a mental exercise I would highly recommend. So what does it mean to demonstrate your ability? What does it mean to claim your ability? The claim is the LinkedIn profile. The claim is the resume. The claim is the answers to the questions in the interview. That's what you're claiming. But how do you demonstrate your expertise? Well, I know in the technology business, and this is just an example, if you're a software engineer, there's a website called GitHub, GITHUB, and that's exactly what it is. It's where software engineers go and put their code there, and they can link to that site from their own site or their own LinkedIn profile. And what that gives is if anyone's interested in finding out how this guy thinks, how this gal thinks, and how she or he writes code, you can put samples of your own code up there. Now, I wouldn't know what to make of those samples because I'm not a programmer, but if I was looking at the resume of a software engineer and he had samples of his code on his GitHub site and I could look at some of his code, that might make the difference between talking to him and not talking to him. And I would imagine that there are many, many sites, depending on what you do. If you're an artist, you could probably put your art on Pinterest, and I'm sure there are other sites you could display your art. If you're a writer, I fancy myself as a writer. I write a lot, and I make a lot of videos, and those are two ways that I demonstrate my ability. If you were to watch me on video, as a matter of fact, a quick story, one of my current clients found me exactly like that, and I didn't know him. We were connected through some circumstances behind the scenes, second level stuff. And he reached out to me on LinkedIn, I don't know, a little over 6 months ago or so, and said, do you offer leadership training? And I thought to myself, well, I've never called it that, but I've been doing it for 30 years. So I said, yes. And we got on a Zoom call, and his enthusiasm on that first introductory call, it was as if he knew me. He said that I feel like I know you because I've been watching your videos and reading your work. And it was a done deal before I opened my mouth. So we're working together and we're having a really good time, and we're both getting quite a bit out of the experience. So that's a perfect example of demonstrating my expertise. Now, how do you get those eyes on that work? How do you get people to look at that work? Well, that's a whole nother topic for another time, but that's, it's called marketing, and so not a topic for this particular episode, but we could talk about it if you wanted to go deeper into that. So it's not just as easy as putting your stuff somewhere. You got to get people to look at it. But, the notion that you could, so you got audio recordings, you got video recordings, you have workbooks, you have white papers, and you can put all of these things or links to all of these things on your LinkedIn profile. So look at that recommendation as perhaps another way to get around this broken hiring system. Okay. We haven't fixed it because you still got to get people to look at your stuff, but you can put your stuff someplace. We do too much resume discussion, and we do too much cover letter discussion. I don't think most people read cover letters, quite honestly. I think most people discount resumes in a quick glance in 5 seconds, 10 seconds. So you got to do something to stand out. And I think demonstrating what you can do versus claiming that you can do something is a much more powerful angle on getting out there and getting in front of decision makers. And I think the last, piece of content before I answer whatever questions you might have, I think and this kind of embedded in all of my work, and I want to kind of explain what I mean, but it's stop following the rules. And there's all kinds of rules out there, and depending on the circumstances you're in, there's rules about how to get out of your car and get onto an airplane, and the rules that are involved in going through the process of doing that. There are rules, right? There are rules around the hiring process, but in my experience, those rules are almost made to be broken. And I think I've had multiple conversations over the years where I've actually been able to get on the phone with the vice president of information technology or the director of information technology or even the CIO. In this example I explained earlier, that was the CIO. But and the times that I've gotten on the phone and said things like, "I'm so glad I got you on the phone. I know you're obviously very busy, but I wanted to ask you, I see what you're doing with this particular SAP implementation," or whatever the case might be. And I wonder, how's the resourcing going on that? Are you having a pleasant time hiring people in there? Are you using contractors and inevitably, when you get someone who's the actual decision maker on the phone, they hate the hiring process. They often have derogatory things to say about people in the hiring process because it requires their time. They're wasting their time looking at resumes of unqualified people, and then they're interviewing people that they shouldn't be interviewing face to face because they could have been pre-qualified or disqualified with a little bit more legwork. And so anything you can do to get in front of a decision maker, I would suggest you do it, as long as it falls within, normal moral guidelines and boundaries and such. But I really think this is another mindset shift. I really think you need to go, I'm not paying attention to the rules. I'm not paying attention to the process as much. I'm going to try to be creative around the process. And I'll close with a quick story about a friend of mine years ago, before they did advertising on the walls in the men's bathrooms. So this was a long time ago. He got an idea to do that. And it was a huge success. I won't get into the details, but the way he got into it was he picked up the phone and he called the owner of the Philadelphia 76ers. And the woman who answered the phone, he said, "Can I speak to," so I can't remember the guy, the owner's name, but "Can I speak to so-and-so?" And he said, "May I tell him who's calling?" And he said, "Larry Bird." And she said, "Oh, of course. Just a second, Mr. Bird." And she put the call through, and this guy says, "Larry, how's it going, man?" And my friend says, "I'm not Larry Bird, sir. My name is Chris, and I have a fantastic idea that I think you'll be very interested in, and I think you can make a lot of money with this idea. Can I have 10 minutes of your time?" And I always thought to myself, it's a great story because it worked, and the success, multi-million dollar success. But I think that the thing to understand is the guy sitting at the desk, the owner of this sports franchise, he probably did something similar to that to get where he was. And pardon my French, but people with big balls, they like other people with big balls. So when you're going into the hiring process, think of that story. Because if you could get in front of the person that was making the decision to hire you and you knew you were qualified, talk about a fast track to the finish line. So, hopefully this series was helpful. I'm going to put it all in one accessible place. I think it's housed on LinkedIn already, but I want to make it more accessible so that if you didn't get a chance to watch them all, you want to rewatch one of them, I'll make them as accessible to you as I can. But let's see if I had a couple questions. And I really struggle with shyness. So interviews and things like speaking or being on video are really hard for me. Any suggestions? Yeah, I can't claim to have ever struggled with shyness, but I've coached a lot of people up that were shy. And my experience is there's no shortcut to it. It's practice. And I think that the more you practice, the more confidence you'll get. The more you talk to people like me about the nuance and the tactics and the strategies around getting in front of people. I mean, if you looked at the first videos I ever shot years ago, it's probably creepy. It's probably boring. It's probably like, not that these are anything fantastic, but I feel very comfortable in front of a microphone and on a camera now because I've done it hundreds of times. So it might not be the answer that you want, but I think it's the truth. I think it's the reality. And you can practice in all kinds of different modalities. Practice on your own first while you're really embarrassed. Maybe get a mirror involved after a couple of practice runs. Maybe get a friend on the other end of the conversation. I mean, you can gradually get into that slot. I suppose there are people out there that even with practice, they're just so shy they can't overcome that. That's probably not my expertise. That's probably more of a psychological play that I can't probably help you with. But I do think practice is the way to get there. And don't worry about being a geek or being stupid or being boring. Don't worry about any of that stuff, because you can work through that. You can get yourself on the other end of that stuff. I grew up being told to follow the rules, so quote unquote breaking them seems counterintuitive. Yeah, I struggle with that too. I remember having a conversation. Must have been 35 years ago. I was like right out of college, and I was in sales, and I had gone. In sales, you often go out with a senior sales rep while you get your legs under you. And I remember the first time there was this 80-year-old small company owner, and don't remember what kind of company it was. He was a pretty cool guy. I called him Mr. And I introduced myself as Mr. And this guy, the senior sales rep, as soon as we got out of the building and into the car, he just ripped me a new one. He's just like, "You putting that guy up on a pedestal, and once he gets up on that pedestal, it's going to be real hard to get him down." And I talk to a lot of young people that struggle with that. It's the same concept, this politeness, this sticking to the rules, playing by the rules thing. And I get it. And there are a lot of situations where the rules are safety related and life threatening related. So, I'm not saying don't follow any of the rules, but I'm saying in the hiring process, it's another mindset shift. You're going to have to do some visualization. You're going to have to talk to some people about it. But I'm telling you right now, and I am an expert in this particular area just because I've done it so long. If you follow the rules all along the way, you're going to slow the trip down, and you might never get there. So break a few little ones and get your legs under you, so to speak. How quirky should I be in order to stand out? Well, as I told you my story about Larry Bird, my friend Larry Bird, but I think that's a judgment call. I think the most important thing for me is I'd rather you err to more quirky than less, but it has to be authentic. It has to be you. So I was just coaching somebody earlier today, and I used the word presumptuous. And he said, what is that? That's a good word. What does that word mean? And I said, well, it means to presume. It means to assume that you know something that perhaps you don't even have enough information in order to know. And I said, and I just, this is like a half hour ago, I just said to him, he said, well, I'm going to look that up. That's a good word. I said, you can't use it until it's yours, because if you're not using words like presumptuous, and then presumptuous comes out of your mouth, you're going to appear presumptuous. Okay. So you have to be authentic. So you kind of have to define your own lines of what unique means. I would like to think that if you looked at my website and my LinkedIn profile and almost everything I've written or recorded, you would see a consistency there. You would see the same guy. It might be, he might get a little more articulate over time. He might get a little more confident over time, but it's going to be the same guy. Like, I don't show up as a different guy, as opposed to being, I might be tired one day and a little more energetic the next, but excuse me, because I'm human. But I believe I at least put a lot of energy and effort into authenticity, because I think it's probably the most effective thing to do to be trusted and to be listened to and to be respected and to be viewed as a thought leader or an authority in a particular space. I think authenticity, it's right up there with consistency, and you can become more authentic with consistency. Maybe I'll leave you with this, because that's the last question that I have. Is just with this, no matter what it is, show up every day and show up prepared. I write down the words consistency, authenticity, and gratitude every morning as part of a routine that I go through. And it's very helpful to me. And I think it would be to you as well. You don't have to use those words, but you can find words that kind of you feel like define who you are, and practice them and write them down, and you'll become them if you keep it up over time. So, like I said, that's a wrap for this one. This is the last episode. I have not yet decided with my colleague what other episodes we're going to do, what other content we're going to do. But I think I like the idea of the LinkedIn Live, and I hope it gets a little bit bigger and grows, and we get it out there. If you think any of this information would resonate or help any of your friends, spread the word, man. Spread it around. I see evidence that this kind of information is way needed out there. It's most people don't have access to this kind of information. And then, at the end, if you want to get on the phone with me, that's how my process works. My customer journey starts with a phone call, and you can access my calendar on my website, which you can get to at markaylward.com. It's AYLWARD. And 30 minutes on my dime. I ask you what's going on. You tell me what's going on. I tell you if I can help you, and then how I can help you. And if you want my services from there, we'll talk about what that looks like. But I would encourage any and all of you to come and get on my calendar, and we can have a chat about anything to do with professional development or career development. All right. Hope you enjoyed it. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks.